Going to have a look at the newspapers now. Nick Rushworth is joining me here on set. And of course, those US midterm elections, well, they're all over the front pages, aren't they, Nick? You've been having a look at a couple of the American papers.
Hi to you, Stuart. Yeah, let's go to the Boston Globe, which has got a comment piece which opens with, "And the winner is," and it's not a political personality or even a political party, but it's actually the boring side of American politics, and that is the incumbency factor. So, of course, the columnist Jeff Jacoby there, you can see the piece, is saying that Americans will build this as the most important election of their lifetimes again. And what we had was the Democrats focusing on abortion rights, the end of democracy. Trump, on the other side of the spectrum, was saying, by delivering a humiliating rebuke to Biden, you're going to preserve your liberties and rights and so on. Both sides of the spectrum saying, throw the bums out. And what happened, Jeff Jacoby said in his column, of course, they voted to keep the bums in, basically. Really, you have 9 out of 10 Congress men and women are being returned to office, not just in this midterm, but election after election after election. And so that's what's happened here. No red wave, a red ripple.
Yeah, no red wave, just lots of bums. Now, one of those incumbents is Governor Ron DeSantis in Florida, of course. He's emerging as a pretty strong contender to run for president for the Republicans in 2 years' time. And Nick's been looking at the Miami Herald for us.
And the Miami Herald's editorial board, which argues that Trump better watch out. Ron DeSantis has just got a lot stronger. It says there was no red ripple or red wave in Florida for him to be returned to office. There was a red tsunami. And he got decisive votes in the Hispanic community, and he's obviously, the rumor is now that he's going to be a strong contender for 2024 for the Republicans. Now, one sign of Trump's disarray about that is he started calling Ron DeSantis Ron DeSanctimonious. And the quote in the Miami Herald piece is that perhaps Trump realizes that a more disciplined, less gaffe-prone version of himself could be his Achilles heel. DeSantis has the Trump essence, the MAGA message, if you like, but in a more statesman-like package. That's the argument for the Miami Herald editorial board. Let's go to a cartoon now. It's in London Evening Standard, which is saying, well, it's not saying anything, actually. It's showing us Trump not riding that red wave. He's falling off that surfboard, well, perhaps about to anyway. So the headlines, the articles, the comment pieces in all the press that I've looked at the last couple of hours saying he is the loser. The midterms have been a big disaster for him.
It's 7:20 in the morning here in Paris. Thanks for showing us that image, Nick. Let's move on to something different now then. We have COP27, of course, continuing in Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt. Nick has spotted a piece in a Ukrainian paper. Now, this is talking about the impact of the Russia-Ukraine conflict, of course, massive impact on the climate itself.
Well, I really found this absolutely fascinating. The argument here is that what you've got is a war in place, Ukraine, Russia, and we're talking in the bulletins a lot about this move away from dependence on Russia for fossil fuels. The Russian economy will shrink. So there's some positive impact in terms of going to renewables in this COP27 urgency that we're facing. But this particle really looks at the other side of the picture, the nitty-gritty of actually having a war. You've got the release of unnecessary greenhouse gas emissions with every missile or shot fired by Russia and Ukraine in this conflict. Secondly, you've got the destruction of towns and cities. That's releasing carbon from physical infrastructure. You've got forced migration. That releases carbon. You've got emissions related to future construction. So a war is the production of weapons, which is contaminating the habitat and so on. Just a long list of specific reasons why climate change is a result of this complex. And the standout quote for me in this article is that when Russia's war with Ukraine concludes, there needs to be an assessment of crimes against humanity, of war crimes and climate crimes. So an analysis needs to be made of the direct, indirect effects, and Russia must be held to account. That's the message. I want to go from the Kyiv Post to the Moscow Times, another fascinating article, actually from several days ago, and it's by a Carnegie Fellow, Andrei Kolesnikov, who's really making a plea for the future of his country. And he's arguing Putin's rule will end. Dictators have come and gone. Stalin's death led to a thaw in Russian politics, a relative thaw. Khrushchev was ousted. That led to stagnation under Brezhnev. But then we had perestroika from that with Gorbachev. So Putin will not be immortal, despite the elites around him saying that, giving the impression that he could be. So this is a real must-read anyway. Just if you're looking for hope, a glimmer of hope, because it's really saying that there will come a time when the totalitarianism ends, and that there'll have to be a succession, and the whole Putinism will end. And the quote there in the piece that at the end of it is, we have to remake the political system and rebuild the moral fibre of our nation. And it won't be the last time we will be forced to do this. Repetition is the mother of learning. And I read that feeling, gosh, when you think about the czars of Russia and then the communist revolution, and now we have this return to dictatorship, the sense that, well, that too will ebb and flow, won't it? So a fascinating piece and one to go to. Moscow Times and Kyiv Post, really two great papers to go to.
Great to sum it up. Nick, thank you very much, leaving us on a positive note, which we all need, don't we, after the rest of the news. Nick Rushworth, the papers on France 24.